Without further ado, I want to bring in the senator from Kansas, Dr. Roger Marshall. Senator, great to see you. Huge economic news coming out this morning. And I think it's got to put a smile on a lot of people's faces throughout the administration and up on Capitol Hill, where the experts keep telling us that things are going to go to heck in a handbasket, that everything's going to fall. And yet you guys talked a lot about growth and the importance of that when it came to not just the country and the economy, but to the debt and the deficit. How big of a deal is this report to you and your colleagues this morning?
Well, the first thing I go to is our interest rate. And Jerome Too Late Powell, he's got to be eating a little bit more crow here, in my humble opinion. Maybe he should have decreased interest rate a quarter point a month ago, a quarter point today, and maybe a half point next month. So I think he's eating a lot of crow. We're seeing unemployment stay low. We're seeing inflation down. Grocery gas prices are stabilized. Good GDP. And why? This isn't just happenstance. I've never seen an economy and a country's attitude turn around in 6 months like it has. I think a lot of this goes back to rolling back the regulations and really just a reestablishment of law and order and people having faith in this country once again.
So the Fed's meeting right now through tomorrow. If he doesn't cut rates, and I think that based on, again, I got a D in economics, so you should take as much economic advice from me as medical advice, and that's 0. That being said, when you look at the analysis that you just provided and think the Fed's meeting, the president has been very clear that he wants an interest rate cut. If they adjourn tomorrow without cutting rates, are the calls for the president to fire him going to go greater or louder or not?
So I think they're going to grow louder, but my advice to the president, if he asks for it, is not to fire Jerome Powell. This guy reminds me of a lame duck coach has had 3 losing seasons. He's another. They're having a horrible season right now, and he should resign. Okay,
but if he fires him, does Senator Roger Marshall support President Trump if he fires Jerome Powell tomorrow?
I will, absolutely. I'll support the president's decision. And I think it's making the play call, right? Someone has to make the play call, and I'd be okay with that. But if I was a man, if Jerome Powell was a man, he should resign. And again, we just have no confidence in him. The economy has no confidence in him. He's served his country, in my opinion, not very well. He's added to the debt. He's continues to have an upside down balance economic situation there at the Feds as well. I can't believe that he's losing money like he has. What they've done with quantitative easing is absolutely criminal. It goes back to 2008.
So the president toured the Fed last week, and I was asked, and I personally believe that it was to lay the predicate for cause, to say this chairman has mismanaged his own budget, allowed massive millions and millions, hundreds of millions of dollars of overruns to the project of restoring the Fed. So I believe that was the predicate for cause. Do you believe that President Trump, A, has the authority straight up to fire the Fed chairman, or B, and again, maybe it's C, something else, but B, that it has to be for cause and that would be the cause?
Well, you're the political analyst here. I think we have to think the political side of this as well. We can get all the lawyers in and all the king's men in and give us an opinion, but there's a huge political risk to this. And that's, if I was his advisor, that's what I'd be talking to him more about is, I think it's one more reason you would go to Jerome Powell, have my chief go to Jerome Powell and say, here's the cause. Why don't you help us all out here and resign and let the country get down the road? Look, it's just a new chapter. It's a new day. This is the dawn of a new golden economic era and safety for this country, and be best for him to move along and enjoy his retirement.
Yeah, I think it's very Christopher Wray. If you remember, the FBI director said, look, I don't want to deal it out, battle it out with the president. I technically have a 10-year term, but I'm going to do the right thing and resign. I think you're absolutely right. Someone needs to have a heart-to-heart and say, look, we can fight it out. Our lawyers are going to win. Or you can resign and kind of, have a couple days to clean out your office. Speaking of the golden age, though, president's racking up big wins on trade. And this EU trade deal announced over the weekend, I got to think from the statements that I saw put out, sounds very much in the Kansas wheelhouse. It was a lot of farmers, a lot of ranchers who were very excited about the prospect of this deal. What does the EU trade deal mean for the agriculture business, in particular the farmers and the ranchers, et cetera, in Kansas?
Yeah, well, we haven't sold a cheeseburger in Europe in maybe forever, certainly in this century, right? And we make the best beef in the world. No one can argue that. No one can replicate it. The cattle industry is what's keeping our ag sector together right now. We're struggling with our commodities like wheat and sorghum, soybeans. So cattle is driving the agriculture industry right now in the state of Kansas. So selling them cheeseburgers is really important. The other issue is ethanol. We actually 50% of our corn crop goes to making ethanol. We have capacity to do more. So selling it to them is a huge opportunity. And remember, if you put the EU together, they're the number one trade deficit that we have. It kind of caught me off guard, but China I think is closer to 300 billion and the EU's collectively is about $250 billion. So between these two countries, between the EU and China, it's half of our trade deficit. So I think that agriculture is a great opportunity for us to grow back and to shrink that deficit. And want to emphasize all these deals. It's not necessarily the tariffs that are important to farmers and ranchers. It's the non-tariff barriers that EU uses to keep us from selling American beef into that country.
Right. I spent some time at the U.S. Trade Rep's office, and the fake issues that they come up with over and over again on GMOs and things like that to prevent. Right. But I want to kind of segue into that because you are a doctor, and there's a lot of sort of cross current now between a lot of us want to trade more. Particularly, I agree with you, the ag sector taking a big hit as well as the auto sector for these non-tariff barriers that they create artificial barriers to market access for a lot of U.S. producers, ranchers, manufacturers, et cetera. But here at home, there's also the MAHA movement and a lot of discussion and concern about artificial dyes, pesticides, and things like that. So how do you navigate this as a doctor and yet an advocate for not just Kansas, but for the agriculture industry? What is that like for you right now, and how do you kind of come down on this?
Yeah, well, Sean, I feel like my whole life God has prepared me for this moment to be a fifth generation ag kid and spent 25 years in healthcare, managing a diabetic clinic for pregnant women was a big part of my practice. So I think I've been prepared for this particular moment. And being able to have a great relationship with Secretary Kennedy and Secretary Rollins, with you, with Secretary of Agriculture, at the same time, know what Kansas farmers and ranchers are doing. And we're doing so many great things already and sharing that with the MAHA people and helping them to understand that we're trying to get there. Look, a Kansas farmer doesn't want to have to use any more fertilizer or pesticide than they have to. They're very, very expensive. So we're developing modern regenerative agriculture practices where we're decreasing by 90% the drift of those chemicals leaving the field, and we're using 60% less, again, through precision agriculture, through modern day technology. So we're getting there. And I think just what can we do then on the Ag Committee to help accentuate the positive, to help these early adapters to spread that love, so to speak, as well. So I'm spending a lot of time educating MAHA on what we're doing in agriculture and kind of focusing on soil health. That healthy soil leads to healthy food, leads to healthy people. So motivating farmers to grow that healthy soil.
Do you believe, I mean, there's a lot of people that I talk to in the movement that talk about seed oils, pesticides, things like that. So there's one thing, I mean, from what you're talking about, like how do we get somewhere, right? How do we get healthier? How do we have better soil? But is our current state right now with what we get in our food, right? Pesticides, seed oils, et cetera. Are you confident that we're as healthy as we can be, that we're being honest with the American people when it comes to what we eat and drink?
I think we have a long way to go on what America chooses to eat, and that would be the ultra-processed food. I think that is the boogeyman here, is the ultra-processed food. I don't think it, in my humble opinion, I've looked at the studies on plant-based seed oil versus fat from animals, and I don't think that's the issue. I know that my MAHA people disagree with me. I think it's that they happen to be using that seed-based oil in ultra-processed food. I think it's the salt and the sugar that's in the ultra processed food that's the actual problem. I think we made huge strides when it comes to these potential toxins. Right now, we only put down most of the pesticides before we plant the seed. So by the time that seed's coming up, we're no longer, there's minimal around to actually be left in a residue is what they call it. And we're becoming more and more strict on what we're doing to measure that residue, whether you're at the co-op elevator or whether you're at the milling plant. My sorghum growers especially have adopted these modern practices where they're using just minimal. They're measuring it. They're proving that indeed it's healthy. And, are concerned about our waters. Again, 90% less fertilizer is ever leaving the field by modern day agriculture. So we're getting there, Sean, but I'm not nearly satisfied. But in American agriculture, remember, we're dads and grandfathers and mothers and grandmothers first. We happen to be farmers, but we want our children to be healthy as well. Certainly, you don't want to go out and misuse these pesticides. You don't want to be dipping your fingers in it. You don't want to be breathing it. You need to be using it with the very strictest of techniques.
You mentioned Maha and Bobby Kennedy or whatever. There's a story that came out from CNBC that says U.S. to remove mercury preservatives from flu shots following RFK vaccine panel. You've worked, obviously, as a doctor before you entered the Senate and the House extensively, as you mentioned, with young kids and mothers. There's a lot of hype about vaccines and Bobby Kennedy and at least from my standpoint, I've like I said, zero. I mean, I basically took CPR in like 8th grade. That's my medical experience, right? But so I don't know. But what I feel like I hear with Bobby is saying, I'm not anti-vaccine. I'm anti some of the stuff they put in vaccines like mercury. So can you just settle fact from fiction? Like what should we as parents, as consumers, as practitioners, like what do we need to know about, in particular, this flu vaccine, mercury in particular? Like, do you share that concern? Are we headed in the right direction? Is this all a bunch of, a big hoax? Like, I don't know what to make of it. I feel like I go to someone like you as my doctor and they say, take this, I trust you. So what do I need to know as a consumer or as a parent? Yeah,
Sean, so I don't have a single answer. Number one is this is why I think the relationship between the doctor and the patient is sacred. And each person's an individual. The advice I gave my parents on the COVID shot was different than the advice I gave my children and for their children as well on the COVID shot. Completely two different risk factor profiles there as well. My big concern here is when vaccines are made not in the United States, that China does knockoffs. And they don't have the highest safety standards that we do. Just recently, I'm going to give you an example. The GLP-1 drugs, China has been making a knockoff drug, and then they sending it to compounders in the United States. And they may not know it's a knockoff drug, but 14 people have died from that using that compounded GLP-1 in the past year. 0 people have died from using U.S.-based FDA-approved drugs. So the impurity scares the death out of me. On the vaccine, the interaction amongst them scares the death out of me. I'll give you one example. Secretary Kennedy and myself have both said MMR is the best way to prevent measles, but it's not given until you're a year of age. It's been around forever. It's proven to be safe. And as opposed to measles can actually kill, especially young kids. So my advice is to get the MMR vaccine at age 1. On the other hand, the hepatitis vaccine for a 2-day-old or 1-day-old, when mom is healthy, she's not, who are the risk of people with hepatitis, right? It would be homosexuals and people, prostitutes, that type of thing, drug abusers, right? That's who's at risk for hepatitis. So I don't see any, what is there to gain from giving my 2-day-old granddaughter the hepatitis vaccine? Let their immune system develop a little bit. So the science is not settled, Sean. It's never settled. And it's my job as your doctor to try to keep up with that and give you the very best advice I can. Sorry, that's a long answer.
No, Senator, I know your time is 10. One quick question. The Senate's about to go, scheduled to have a recess in August. There's 144 of President Trump's nominees. How many should get handled? Should all of them? Should the Senate go on recess? Should it not? What's your view on this?
We were hired, we were elected to do the work of the people. President Trump 78 million people voted for him. For him to fulfill his mission and his agenda, we need more of these people approved. Look, Chuck Schumer is jamming us right now. He's doing things that we never did, people that should be easily confirmed by unanimous consent, not take any time up. So if we stay here this August, it'll be Chuck Schumer's fault, just like if we end up in some type of a financial shutdown in September. This is Chuck Schumer overreacting to AOC and just the psychotic nature right now of the Democrat Party, if that makes sense. So I'm willing to stay. I want to stay, whatever it takes to get these people confirmed. The Senate needs to do its job. Yes, I want to go home, see family, go out and do our town halls, all those types of things I want to do. But my number one mission right now, got the big, beautiful deal done. My number one mission right now is to get these people confirmed.
Awesome. Senator, thanks for being with us. Really appreciate it.